Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization. Welcome to our daily update for today, which is May 6th, 2021. I'm going to begin by telling you about the group of 7 foreign ministers who met in London from May 3rd to May 5th. They were preparing for the upcoming G7 conference, which will take place in June under the direction or under the auspices of Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The main focus of this 2-day meeting was to organize a joint front against China and against Russia. The insistence was a demand that China adhere to the rules-based order. Now, as we've been discussing, the rules-based order has nothing to do with international law. It has to do with a unipolar design drafted by the transatlantic, or for the transatlantic countries, but under the direction of the British and the Americans, particularly to defend the interests of the City of London, Wall Street, and Silicon Valley. Now, the demand that they made is that China, if it wishes to be accepted, must adhere to this rules-based order. They declared the Belt and Road Initiative, China's infrastructure program for economic development, what we called initially the New Silk Road, they called that a danger to the rules-based order. In the State Department briefing on the discussion, they reported that China is using its development strategies to, quote, make countries dependent on them, unquote, compromising their sovereignty using economic coercion. That's not what China's doing. That's what the International Monetary Fund has been doing for the last 50 years. That's why so many countries today are still poor. That's why there's famine in Africa. That's why India has not been prepared to deal with the incredible problems they're facing with the coronavirus pandemic. It's in fact the demand that these countries pay their debt first, that they're subordinated to the interests of the Wall Street and London banks and not to the sovereign needs of their people. That's the rules-based order that the G7 foreign ministers demand that China adhere to. Now, this is they describe this rules-based order as enforcing open societies, saying China must play by the rules. Now, included in this, as addition to the G7, were South Korea, Japan, Australia, and India. With the exception of South Korea, all of these have historic relations to the British Empire. And it's being pushed by Boris Johnson that these countries be included in some form in the G7. Now, the final communique called for containing or counteracting, I should say, Russia's irresponsible and destabilizing behavior and to confront China for its violation of the rules-based order. Now, while in London, Tony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, had a series of meetings, including with an interview with the Financial Times and also with Dominic Raab, who is the British Foreign Minister. And what did he do? He praised the special relationship. He said that the special relationship, actually this is a joint statement from Raab and Blinken, the special relationship is focused on addressing threats to the international rules-based order and to democratic values and human rights. Remember, what hypocrisy for Blinken to talk about human rights when he's enforcing sanctions on Syria, supposedly for humanitarian purposes, that have plunged 90% of the Syrian population below poverty and threatens the lives of millions of people from famine and starvation. Now, they went on to say, Blinken just went crazy talking about the special relationship. He praised Churchill's trip 75 years ago to Fulton, Missouri, where he made his famous Iron Curtain speech, and roped Harry Truman into turning the United States into an enforcer of a post-World War II British world empire. Blinken praised that speech as the foundations for the special relationship. What he said is that the special relationship, and these are quotes, is enduring, it's effective, it's dynamic, and it's close to the hearts of the American people, Tony Blinken said. He said the United States has no closer ally, no closer partner than the United Kingdom. And I'm very glad for the chance to say that again here today. For his part, Dominic Raab said that what they're doing by bringing others into the G7 is to create a democratic alliance to, quote, counterbalance the autocracies of China and Russia. He described this as agile clusters of like-minded countries which want to protect the multilateral system. This is not a multilateral system. This is a unipolar world that's being dictated by the City of London and Wall Street. After this foreign ministers' confab, Blinken went to Ukraine, accompanied by none other than Victoria Nuland, who is one of Biden's overseers for the February 2014 regime change coup there. But Blinken proclaimed, coming from the G7 meeting, that all are with Ukraine and its sovereignty against Russia. While Blinken was in Kiev, or before Blinken came to Kiev, Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, was in Poland on May 3rd, where he met with President Duda, who said Poland supports Ukraine's European and Euro-Atlantic aspirations, including membership in the European Union and NATO. Ukraine in NATO is one of the red lines that Putin warned against crossing, because it would put NATO troops on the border, the western border of Russia. Now, while Blinken is confirming that the U.S. is working on setting up a summit between Putin and Biden, probably in June after the NATO and G7 summits, he once again warned Russia against continuing, quote, reckless and aggressive actions, unquote. Now, while he's giving these warnings, while they're all talking about Russia's malign intent and aggressive behavior and threats of coercion to its neighbors, what's going on in Eastern Europe? Something called Defender Europe 21, military exercises that are the biggest in many, many years, including shipping U.S. equipment and soldiers to Bulgaria, to Poland, to the Baltic countries, where there are ongoing maneuvers taking place. At the same time, you have a British NATO naval exercises northwest of Scotland. It's called Joint Warrior. I wonder if that's a reference to either pot-smoking sailors or to the protection of drug traffickers, which is one of the major roles of the British military today. Now, given this situation, we see this constant reference to the rules-based order. But as I pointed out yesterday, what kind of rules-based order insists on the right to impose draconian austerity on nations, whether it's for the Great Reset or the Green New Deal? What kind of rules-based order starves children, as U.S. sanctions are doing against the people of Syria and Yemen? This is not a rules-based order. This is a unipolar world system, and it is being rejected increasingly by people all over the world. We'll be discussing this in great detail on Saturday, May 8th, the day after tomorrow, with two panels on the strategic situation and the economic and health situation. I will be moderating the first panel, and I'd invite all of you to join me in participating. You can go to the schillerinstitute.com and register for that. Now, tomorrow I'll be taking your questions. It's the weekly Friday questions. Send them to me at harleysch@gmail.com. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.